Good morning, welcome to Wake Up Well. This week we're going to look at the grace of God. Today's question: what does the grace of God worked out through our lives look like in our everyday life? In answering that question, we're going to look at the passage in Matthew chapter 25, verses 31 to 40. I'm reading from the NLT, the New Living Translation. But when the Son of Man comes in his glory, and all the angels with him, then he will sit upon his glorious throne. All the nations will be gathered in his presence, and he will separate the people as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He will place the sheep at his right hand and the goats at his left. Then the king will say to those on the right, "Come, you are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the creation of the world. For when I was hungry, you fed me. When I was thirsty, you gave me a drink. I was a stranger, you invited me into your home. I was naked, you gave me clothing. I was sick, you cared for me. I was in prison, you visited me." Then these righteous ones will reply, "Lord, when did we ever see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty or give you something to drink, or a stranger and show you hospitality, or naked and gave you clothing? When did we ever see you sick or in prison and visited you?" And the king will say, "I tell you the truth. When you did it to one of the least of these, my brothers and sisters, you were doing it to me." How can we separate and differentiate between a sheep and a goat? Well, first of all, they look different and they behave differently. They feed on different things. But what makes them different? What makes them different is because they carry a very different DNA. The genetic material down within the cellular level are all very different. And when God created a sheep, they can't help it but be a sheep and do those things because those things are in the very fiber of their being, are right in the DNA. And as children of God, carrying God's DNA, we also carry the very characteristics and personality of God deep within us. In this passage, Jesus is telling us that those who belong to him, those who carry his DNA, he can recognize them by the manifestation of what they do. And this includes feeding the hungry, giving a drink to the thirsty, providing a home or hospitality to a stranger, clothing those who are naked, visiting those who are in prison. And here, the people did these things without even realizing, and that's because it is in their very heart and in their very DNA that they did those things as a child of God. And when God looks at us, he looks right deeply into our hearts, and he can tell those who belong to him and those who do not belong to him. So how does the grace of God work out in our everyday life? Well, as a child of God, we all carry the very DNA of God's personality and character, and therefore we can't help it by looking after those who belong to the kingdom, our own brothers and sisters, those who are hungry, those who are thirsty, those who are strangers and have nowhere to live, those who are naked, and those who have found themselves in prison. It is almost natural for us to do that, to have a heart and compassion, to really help those people. And that is how the grace of God worked out through our lives look like in our everyday life.